Welcome, everyone. I'm Dick Deming, Medical Director of Mercy One Cancer Center and the founder of Above and Beyond Cancer. Welcome to our weekly cancer education series. It's brought to you in part by a grant from the Iowa Oncology Society. And our topic tonight is the healing power of poetry. And my guest is writer, poet, and former Polk County Conservation Director, and also former interim director and deputy director of the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. A lot there. Pat Boddy.
Yeah, hi.
I almost had so much to say, I forgot your name.
Thanks for having me.
So Pat and I have known each other for a long time, and much of our interaction has been around poetry.
Yeah, pretty much almost exclusively, really, because you've been so supportive of the Poetry Palooza events that we've been having for the past few years. It was kind of one of the pieces that helped us all pull out of the pandemic, I think.
Yeah, so when I was reading your credentials, I'm going, well, I got to get to know you better because I don't know your conservation side. So the first part we're going to do before we even get into poetry is get to know you a little bit better. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in the suburbs of St. Louis, Ferguson, Florissant for the first half. Yes, that Ferguson. And then Pattonville School District afterwards. I was...
So high school in the St. Louis area?
Yes. In St. Louis, they ask you what high school you went to. So anybody from St. Louis would know Pattonville. So that's where I went to.
Okay. Was that a big public high school?
Yeah, it was a big public high school.
How many in your class?
Probably close to 700.
In your class?
In my class,
Oh,
yeah. Probably over 3,000 in the high school itself. I could be a little off, but it was big.
What was your fame in high school?
I was the class geek. There was that. I was also a theater kid and also a math kid.
What role on the stage in your high school are you most proud of?
Actually, I did get a standing ovation for Sylvia Barrett and Up the Down Staircase. And then I was at the Jewish Community Center Association. I was Emily in our town. And then there was a part who I can't remember the name of, but I played the mom of a young girl with St. Vincent's disease. It's kind of an epilepsy kind of disease in a play called The Rope Dancers. Oh, that was a very dramatic play for a high school to do, but it went over pretty well. Although at one point we actually accidentally brought down the entire set while doing the performance, but that's another story.
So her seizure got out of control.
Exactly. She forgot to bring her arms in when she went through the doorway. Yeah. And it's a really funny story because we finished the scene. It's a very dramatic scene. We finish it. They pull the curtain. It's intermission. And no one says anything. It's just kind of silent. And then here comes the hammer, and the audience erupts in hysterics. They start howling.
So did you have a poetry class in high school?
Oh, yes. Had poetry in high school, had poetry in college, had a deep passion for theater and poetry. They're very intimate, they're intricately linked in my view.
So then where'd you go to college?
University of Missouri at Columbia originally.
What was your first declared major?
It was journalism. And then I went to Iowa State University for agricultural engineering and water resources.
Wow. How did that happen?
Well, I was originally, as I said, both theater and math. So I ended up in an English class at MU where the instructor said, you can write, you should go pursue your writing. And so I kind of abandoned the math to do that. And then after a couple of years in journalism, where we were covering educators who were on strike and making $4,000 a year more than we were, and I thought their strike was valid, I realized I probably needed to do something a little bit more with my life than get up at 4 a.m. and, read the weather report. So I went into engineering, and I've never regretted that.
Wow. So did you get a second bachelor's degree, or did
I had to get a second bachelor's, but because I'd been a math kid, I had done a lot of math. So that's why I was able to get it in a fairly reasonable period of time. And then I went back for my master's in water resources. But I also might add that at the time as a journalist, I was a passionate person about conservation and the environment all along. And I remember covering some stories where you had to be objective, and I didn't feel that objectivity. And I was very aware of that and felt like I wanted to kind of go out and do something more than simply report. Looking back on it, reporting is one of the most important and critical things you can do. I was discounting what I was doing at the time. And if I had to do over again, I might have gone ahead and pursued that more aggressively. A lot of the people I admire greatly for their work in the conservation arena are journalists.
Right. I was just being interviewed by a journalist who was doing a story on radon and how we had passed the radon bill, but there were no enforcement mechanisms in the radon bill.
Yeah.
And I acknowledge that, yeah, that was a shortcoming. Had there been a lot of money or regulations, it might not have passed.
Right.
But you're right. And I said that journalism plays an important role in holding people accountable,
Well,
whether it's legislators or
Yeah.
administrators.
Well, and just building awareness. I think of Richard Louv writing Last Child in the Woods, Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder, for example. There's a lot of different authors out there. The folks who've just recently written Sea of Grass, which speaks so eloquently about our prairie history and what our situation with agriculture, the problems it's causing our water quality and soil protection. And of course, our good friend Neil Hamilton is a great example of that work. And there are others out there that are doing great work.
And Art Cullen is
Oh my gosh, Art.
came
Yeah.
out.
So much. So all of these players, and there are more, they're really doing a lot of great work and building awareness that is hard to do from a, administrative standpoint in the conservation world.
So your first job then out of your second college career, what was your first job out of your ag water system?
I was writing an
Education.
environmental health and socioeconomic study at Brown Engineering for the Cargill plant. That was one of the first assignments I got out of the engineering school college. Yeah.
And you were an employee of
Brown Engineering Company.
Okay.
Great company. Yeah.
Okay. Great. And then so over the course of your career, you did a lot with water and conservation.
Yeah, but also I was really kind of a facilitator of choice on those topics. The thing about engineering is a lot of folks in engineering don't have a strong necessarily communications background. So when you have a communications background and you have some level of comprehension of the basic engineering principles and ideas and topics, you do kind of get a preferential treatment on the communication side of the equation. That's a good way to look at it. So I ended up doing a lot of facilitation work, communications work. I kind of ended up being a translator, if you will, from the technical world to the more of the layperson world on some of those topics. But mostly really just ended up doing a lot of facilitating. I should have brought that poem. I have a poem about facilitation and in our agriculture and water quality issues. I didn't even think to bring it, but I've lived that a lot, working with various communities to try and bring people together as a facilitator and think things through.
You highlight the importance of communication skills. And then, so you've got this highly technical education, but the communication and they blend together. I say the same about medicine. I have a math and science and lots of science college, medical school residency, but I also have a background in communication, high school,
and
debate,
compassion.
And yeah, but the two together, I would say that my communication skills have had more influence on the way I practice medicine and my success than if I had memorized 20 more biochemical equations. No problem doing that, but the way if you're practicing medicine as taking care of patients as opposed to being in the lab in a PhD more situation, the communication is so important.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that that's true when we're trying to work on the ground, work on the land. I think that's equally true there because that's also a people thing. Everything that we're doing is people related.
Mhm.
And it's one of the reasons we wanted to really kind of bring back that Des Moines National Poetry Festival, because we were really realizing that, particularly during the pandemic, but even a little bit ahead of that, that our community would really benefit from the revitalization of that festival, where people were getting to experience the many different layers of poetry and poems and poets. And that's been a big piece.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of poetry in Des Moines, and we're going to talk about 3 different events that are coming up: Poetry on the Prairie, the Favorite Poem Project, and then Poetry Palooza. But let's do a little poetry first.
Okay, that sounds
So,
good to me.
I am not a poet. I love poetry. I love reading and interpreting poetry, but you're a poet. So why don't we start off with one of your own poems?
Oh, okay. Well, we can.
Unless you have another one you want to start off with.
Well, you know what? I do. And the reason
Okay.
why I do
Why,
is
why did you choose this poem?
it's
to start?
because I had been loving theater and poems for a long, long time, but at some point you get engaged and involved in the direct work that you're doing, and you lose sight of some of those pieces. And so it was June of 2011, and I knew I would be leaving the DNR and going to another job. And Garrison Keillor was reading a poem on his Writer's Almanac program, and I had to pull over the car, and I want to set this up. This is a crazy poem. You're going to wonder until I get to the end why a person would like this poem as much as I do. But it is the poem that got me back into poetry. So I wanted to read that.
Okay.
Realizing. Crazy poem.
Crazy
Okay.
poem.
It's called Lunch Will Be Served by Eleanor Lerman. Just when you think that you are on the road to success and the medications have calmed down your wife, plus a big sale at the food store means that you can finally buy your cat a decent meal, that's when you get the news that it's time to stare calamity in the face. And what a face. It comes at you like a speeding pie. It has 3 eyes. It was created by an overdose of nuclear radiation. Its cunning knows no bounds. Meaning now you're going to pay for something you did in a past life, or didn't do, or should have thought about doing, if you even rated a past life. If not, then these are just the normal ups and downs. Which do you think is worse? Anyway, a procession of ghosts will carry your pencil box down to the office from which you will never be allowed to retire. Lunch will be served, but all you can expect is a bag of blood and trans fat. In other words, to rub it in, even the cat will get a better deal. Meanwhile, the universe remains an incomprehensible wheel of grave attraction. Fish, swans, and archers lie in each other's starry embrace, while dark particles have been driving by your house all day in their neutrino cars in a hurry to do a job that will never be revealed to us. And in some versions of this story, the cat has magical powers. Oh my God, you say. I had no idea. Well, now you do. In fact, in some versions of this story, beings of faith and light are in the kitchen dancing with your wife. Then your friends arrive, still lugging around their own dilemmas, hoping you will feed them from the common pot, like in the old days. Wait for it. And as tired as you are, you think you can. Okay.
Wow.
Are you mocking me now?
No, I'm not mocking you. I that would be one where I would have to read a few times. I don't know that I got it figured out by the end.
But the end is, and as tired as you are, you think you can.
Yeah.
Jackie
No, I
Easley's
love
here.
that.
Hello,
I love that. I
hello.
love that. Yeah.
Well, and I think what I love about this poem is there's no holds barred. It is a wild tale. It's incredibly imaginative, but also all the hope that's in it. these beings of faith and light are in the kitchen dancing with your wife. After like I had a speeding pie in your face, and now I don't know. I love the contrast, and I live by the last line.
Yeah. Repeat the last line for us.
And as tired as you are, you think you can.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for acknowledging cat owners.
Okay, now.
So did I just stop the entire conversation?
No.
With this
I
wackadoo poem?
don't really want to delve into that poem and do a critique or figure it out line by line. I think I just want to. It washed over me.
It washed over me back
This
in
guy
June of
is going through
2011.
a lot of stuff. And, some of it is literal and some is not literal, but he's got a bag of rocks. And not sure how he's going to be tomorrow, but let's hope he gets good night's sleep.
I guess part of the point of reading that particular poem is you never know what's going to attract someone in a poem and what will bring them back into the fold of this world that's really about healing and teaching and reflection and learning and advocacy and all kinds of different forms of healing and power.
Yeah.
So it can be
okay, that
wackadoo.
makes me think of one. So this is
good.
one by Brad Aaron Maudlin. And so this was part of Poetry Unbound, where Padraig Otuma reads a poem. And this title of this poem is What You Missed the Day You Were Absent from 4th Grade.
Oh, I remember this well.
Mrs. Nelson explained how to stand still and listen to the wind, how to find meaning in pumping gas, how peeling potatoes can be a form of prayer. She took questions on how not to feel lost in the dark. After lunch, she distributes worksheets that covered ways to remember your grandfather's voice. Then the class discussed falling asleep without feeling you had forgotten to do something else, something important, and how to believe the house you wake up in is your home. This prompted Mrs. Nelson to draw a chalkboard diagram detailing how to chant the Psalms during cigarette breaks and how not to squirm for sound when your own thoughts are all you hear. Also, that you have enough. The English lesson was that I am is a complete sentence. And just before the afternoon bell, she made the math equation look easy. The one that proves that hundreds of questions and feeling cold and all those nights spent looking for whatever it was you lost and one person add up to something.
That is a beautiful poem. Padraig Otuma never picked mine. He picked that one, and one should trust what Padraig Otuma picks. Yeah.
What is the first poem that you have any recollection of?
Oh, The Duel by Eugene Field.
Okay.
The gingham dog and the calico cat side by side on the table sat. Was 12:30, and what do you think? Neither one nor the other had slept a wink. You don't. Anybody know that poem?
Yeah. Nice. I'd forgotten that was called the Duel.
Yeah.
Probably the first one I remember would be like nursery rhymes.
Yeah, that was.
But then when it comes to
perverse.
actual poem for me, it was 7th grade Casey at the Bat.
Oh yeah, Casey at the Bat would be a great one. Yeah.
I can't do it by memory. If I were thinking about it, I could do the last one, the last stanza, but I can't right now.
Well, my mom, who's 100, it's still with us, was raised in an environment of poetry and memorization. And so I was treated to poems consistently in my youth. She could recite them at the drop of a hat, and she knew a lot of them. And she later in life wrote them and won awards. And that was kind of the poetry culture where that sort of came from.
And what do you think is the power of poetry?
I think it's unlimited. And I think it's because we've put up some kind of a little bit of a wall about poetry, but when you really break through that wall and recognize what poetry truly is, it's probably the most accessible of all the art forms. One of the things about Poetry Palooza that we try to do is bring together those who write the word for the written page, as well as the spoken word poets, and those who cross between all of that. And so it's accessible whether you're an auditory learner, whether you like to write written words on a page, whether you like to perform, whether you like to reflect on something more personally and quietly. So it's got that power going to it. And then, as I mentioned, it is healer, it is teacher, it is a reflection of yourself, it is a reflection of a community. And I think one of the reasons that we really wanted to do this work was we felt the community building piece of poetry, which links to all of those other things, healing and teaching and reflection, was one of the great assets of poetry. And that's really turned out to be the case. We did a poetry and pie event. Come for the free pie, stay for the poetry. More than 90 people showed up. And it was one of the more broad, sweeping audiences I've gotten to see in our community in a long time. Mm-hmm. We had 3 poets reading, and Carmen Lampe-Zeitler was the MC, and the pie was good. But the poetry and the communion around all that was even better.
Yeah, and the art form, I mean, obviously there are epic poems that go on for 300 pages, but for the most part, they're really snippets, really a piece that you can digest, and you can look at it. So the first poetry, as we learn is nursery rhymes, is that rhyming, and so you've got the meter and the rhyme, and I think that satisfies something psychologically, just that whole meter and rhyme. Even as you get more of an adult, I tend to read more free form, but there's still this manageable thing that is in and of itself. There's the first time you read it, which you might not totally get everything.
Yeah.
And it's one of those that you really, I love listening to someone read it who reads it and knows kind of what the meaning is, and does some of them don't have enough punctuation that the first time through you really know where to stop and end a thought. Right. But the point I was going to make is it really is philosophy in many ways, a snippet of something that gives you, in the best poems, an idea of where the poet is coming from in terms of, I would say, meaning or purpose, or how life works.
Could I read another one then?
Yes, please.
Because that's a pretty good setup. So Poetry Palooza is an event that we have every spring, typically in April, Poetry Month, where we bring in some guest poets and you've been a great supporter of this, of our whole year of programming, including Poetry Palooza. And this year, one of our poets will be Kimberly Blazer. She is, I wrote it down so I would remember. She's a Native American poet and writer enrolled in the White Earth Band of the Minnesota Chippewa tribe. She was the Wisconsin Poet Laureate in 2015 to 2016. And she's now taken up an appointment as the Lois and Willard Mackey Chair in Creative Writing at Beloit College. So she'll be with us. We'll also have Jewel Rogers, who's Nebraska State poet, Martin Espada. He's published more than 20 books. They have documentaries about him. He's amazing. Won the Book Award for Poetry, the National Book Award for Poetry in 2021, and he teaches at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. We'll have an emerging poet, Kelly Lage. She's from Northern Iowa. She's got 2 books out already, hardly emerging in my humble opinion. And then Jennifer Knox will be the MC. She's been with us before, and anybody who's seen Jennifer Knox, you think the poem I read was crazy? She writes some great stuff, and when she performs, it's like stand-up comedy. She's great. But I wanted to read The Where in My Belly by Kimberly Blazer. Remember, again, she used to be the Poet Laureate of Wisconsin. And I have to apologize in advance. There will be some mispronounced words despite my efforts. The Where in My Belly. Scientists say my brain and heart are 73% water. they underestimate me. A small island, Minnes. I emerged among Minnesota's northern lakes, the wear of Monoman, wild rice in my belly. I am from boats and canoes and kayaks, from tribal ghosts who rise at dawn, dance like wisps of fog on water. My where is white earth nation and white pine forests, knees summer stained with blueberries, pink lady slippers open and wild as my feet. I grew up where math was canasta, where we recited times tables while ice fishing at 20 below, spent nights whistling to northern lights. I am old from medicine's barks and teas, from early, the air damp with cedar, the crack of amic beaver tails on water. Their echo, now a warning to where fish become a percentage of mercury, become a poison statistic, to where copper mines back against a million blue acres of sacred. I am from Libby and the Ogeechobee, women warriors and water protectors from seed gatherers and song makers. The wet where pulse in my belly whispers and repeats like the endless chant of waves on ledge rock, waves on ledge rock, on ledge rock, on waves, on water, Nibbe.
Yeah.
That's her history.
I love that. Yeah, the
It's
history.
beautiful.
So
And I want to say that I pulled this from splitthisrock.org. She reads it on that website. And so I hope you will take the time to go and have her read it to you. It's better delivered by her, and the words are correctly pronounced.
the native words come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is beautiful.
It's also got a strong environmental theme, which I have to say I tend toward.
Mhm. So, in honor of your environmental background, I chose one specifically to connect poetry with conservation and with
Beautiful.
nature. So I'm sure you know this one. This is Wendell Berry,
Oh,
the
yes.
Kentucky farmer poet. And this is his poem called The Peace of Wild Things. And peace is Peace. So peace, The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I waken the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives might be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world, and I am free. I love that poem.
He's hard to top.
Yeah. I thought about
Brilliant
that a
man.
lot during COVID, and just, getting, when you're just at night wondering what's going to happen to the jobs, what's going to happen to people, what are we going to do? And you go out into nature. And I remember walking just a path through the forest and just letting all of that soak in. And, you don't have to know the science of the being in a forest and which chemicals you might be breathing in that come from the trees and how physiologically it works, but that you feel in the grace of the world and that you are free.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Beautiful.
So
you're making my points well.
Yeah. So I still want one of your poems, but I don't want to rush that. If you've got something else.
Well, I have a local poet here.
Okay.
Diane Glass, who,
Yes.
along with several of us, has been one of the founders of the not the Des Moines National Poetry Festival. It's revival here, Poetry Palooza. Poetry Palooza is the name of the whole thing, but it's also a specific event in April. But the Poetry and Pie events are put on by Poetry Palooza, Favorite Poem Project that you were a part of last year. Well, you've been part of Poetry and Pie as well. And a lot of other pop-ups and things like that we do. So I would like to read one of Diane's, and it's not dissimilar in a way. She's had some interesting experiences out in the landscapes that she's visited. And this is called The Land Will Talk to You If You Listen. And it's from her book, The Heart Hungers for Wildness, a book I can strongly recommend to anyone. The land will talk to you if you listen. I walk with aim across desert shrub grass. Dust from blue grandma sifts over my Adidas. A sagebrush lizard leaps into my wandering path. I see pinyon trees, sagebrush, tumbleweed, the Rio Grande, now dry from drought, what Tamayan Indian tribes saw in settling here. The land will talk to you if you listen. Near the river, a toppled tree trunk with two branches, a chest and arms, an ancient fragment of a Roman bust. Ants, aphids, and beetles devour the soft, spongy fibers, returning them to the earth. Did this tree witness ancestral rituals of Tamayan people? The land will talk to you if you listen. I meander alongside the river until the late afternoon sun and an upsweep of wind call me back. But first, I turn to the ground I've covered, startled to sense a shift, a whiff of smoke, a flash of red, a rattle punctuating the air. Small rainbows bounce off bark in the sun, the decaying trunk transformed, arms now legs, dances for me. A rustle of sound, footsteps on brush. The sun dips below the horizon. Beautiful experience out
beautiful
in the-
images,
in the
just
wild. Yeah.
walking through the land.
Yeah.
What do you think is part of the healing nature of poetry, and maybe even more broadly, art? How does art, whether it's visual, written, performed, what's your thoughts on how it has healing power?
Your thoughts are probably far more advanced than mine. But it's when these images come, when images are shaped and put in your mind's eye, and it's something particularly when it's unexpected or just the opposite, so familiar. All of those things can start to conjure up your own reactions, your own emotions, your feelings, and it starts to, I think, inspire some certain level of self-reflection that wasn't necessarily intended when you first started listening or first started reading. And it is that work that starts to happen within you that begins a level of healing. Now, there are a lot of poems, particularly in the conservation world, that are kind of advocacy related, or that we're speaking to some of the sorrows that we see on our ground in our landscape. But that's also somewhat healing in that whenever there's a level of awareness of a challenge, that's how you start to create the healing fibers of fixing that challenge. So to me, the healing piece is sort of an integral part of it, and it is both self and it is planet and community, if that makes any sense.
It does. That even in demonstrating a problem, it allows you to see yourself as part of a solution.
Yeah. Gives you an opportunity.
It also, in the human conditions, also it allows you to see, feeling our own suffering is part of what allows us to recognize suffering when we see it in someone else, and not just to recognize it, but to want to reach out and relieve it. So in some poetry, and I do have some poems that are specifically around the cancer experience, feeling you're not walking this journey alone. You're not the first one to have walked the journey, and allowing you to maybe look at a philosophical perspective of how to look at this journey. Everyone's entitled to their own metaphor, and if people like the metaphor of fighting cancer and it's a battle, that's okay. It's not the metaphor I would choose. I don't think it's the most soothing metaphor. It's a battle. Usually there's a winner and a loser. And, I think that there's other metaphors that might be better. And some of the poems actually choose metaphors that might give a perspective to someone going through the journey of some other metaphors.
Yeah.
So maybe I will share one that is a recent one. And this poet is actually a spoken word poet, but she does have it written down. And I wasn't familiar with this poet till, unfortunately, she died this summer at age 49 of ovarian cancer. And this was a poem that she performed and wrote when her cancer became stage 4 and went from being potentially curable to being living with incurable cancer. And she titles this poem, "How the Worst Day of My Life Became the Best." And the poet is Andrea Gibson. "When I realized the storm was inevitable, I made it my medicine. I took 2 snowflakes on the tongue in the morning and 2 snowflakes on the tongue by noon. There were no side effects, only sound effects. Reverb added to my lifespan, an echo that asked, 'What part of your life's record is skipping? What wound is on repeat? Have you done everything you can to break out of that groove?' By nighttime, I was intimate with the difference between tying my laces and tuning the string section of my shoes. I made a symphony of walking away from everything that did not want my life to sing. I felt a love for myself so consistent that metronomes tried to copyright my heartbeat. Finally, I understood I am the conductor of my own life, and I will be even after I die. I, like the trees, will decide what I become. A porch swing? A church pew? An envelope that must be licked to be closed? Kinky choice. But I didn't close. I opened and opened and opened until I could imagine that my pain was a sensation of my spirit not breaking, that my mind was a parachute that could always open in time, that I could wear my heart on my sleeve and never grow out of that shirt, that every falling leaf is a tiny kite with a string too small to see, held by the part of me in charge of making beauty out of grief."
Now, see, how does that image not provide some level of healing? That every falling leaf is a tiny kite with a string too small to see, held by the part of me in charge of making beauty out of grief.
Yeah.
That's about as good as it gets.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And for people who might not think about that relationship between beauty and grief, between hills and valleys and between highs and lows, and that philosophically, we have the power to choose how to interpret things that come our way.
Well, and I keep using the word community and building community, but I think I'm almost using it synonymously with empathy. And so I hear you talking about the empathy that poetry really inspires. And that's really my intent when talking about community. It's when we start to understand each other, develop empathy with and for each other. That's a big piece of what this work is all about. Yeah.
And I keep coming back to, because you're a poet, how did you, when did you write your first poem? And when did you think enough of your writing that you feel like you are a poet and that you like to share your own poems?
I like to share my poems because I like to read out loud. As you can tell, I'm reluctant to share my own poems. I like reading other people's poems out loud, but I will read at least one of my own before we're done here today. And I think it just, when you're in community with people working on poetry, that's one of the pieces. So Diane Glass, whom I mentioned, Susanna DeBaca, and other people have come and gone in this kind of sphere of people who get together and share each other's poetry in a very small and private way. And after you've kind of workshopped it like that, Karen Miriam Goldberg, taking classes from her. I know you have read her poem
Yeah,
Lilac before,
yes, I have.
which is a great example of a healing poem. When you do that work, then you start to gain enough confidence that you can at least read your poetry out loud at a free event. I would never charge admission.
but in writing the poem, what comes first? Especially, I think the poems that I have, have a story, a meaning. I mean, they come through with almost like a moral at the end, or a way of looking at the world. Does the idea that I want to share this, making beauty out of grief, then cause the poet to write the poem, or does you start writing the poem and this it's a surprise to you, the punchline that comes?
Yeah, I think for me personally, I know that one should go after it with more intention. That's not the way it works for me. I am not a brilliant poet. I imagine brilliant poets do other things. And I imagine other people who are at my level of poetry writing do other things. But I tend to find some kind of image or prompt or idea or concept and pursue that. And then something comes from there. I also am a musician. And so a lot of the poetry I have written has really started out as song, or I do as many songs really as I have done poems.
So I know Pat plays the harp, but I imagine you play other instruments.
I really
well.
just play the harp. It's
Okay.
enough.
Okay.
It has 7 pedals. You make your sharps and flats. It's enough.
Well, it's enough just to get it to the
There
venue.
you go. Yeah. The number of people who said,
7.
why didn't you take up the flute? Okay. I find the flute to be a much more difficult instrument by golly, because when you pluck a string, you're really on a specific note. The poor flutist has to get their mouth just right. Yeah.
So which came first, poetry or the harp?
Oh, the simultaneously, the love of both,
Okay.
honestly. And I cannot explain why I wanted to play the harp. But I do not remember ever not wanting to play it. And as I said, I was raised by a woman who had me memorizing poems, and she was reciting poems. I don't ever remember poetry being absent. So it was they were just integrated things. And I had a family that just generally speaking loved the arts. We went to the Muni. We would go to dance recitals. We would listen to music. Plays were big in our household. All that stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
So just never forgot it.
Okay, you're up next.
All right, I will read one of my own. And I'm reading it now because it was originally a version of a song, as the title will depict. It's called Prairie Lullaby. Sleep, sweet prairie. May the tall grass fairy breeze sweep stardust to night eyes. Rest, big blue stem. Nestle, prairie chicken. Morning light may bring a sun-pink sky or piercing lightning through gray rain. Harsh or gentle, we may not know why, but trust dawn comes again. Morning light may watch a falcon fly or scorching flames renew through pain. Fierce or tender, we may not know why, but trust life comes again. Sleep, sweet prairie. May the tall grass fairy breeze sweep stardust to night eyes. Rest, big blue stem. Nestle, prairie chicken. Note the gray wolf's cry in this prairie lullaby.
Beautiful. And you said your reference to this being a song, you mean the word lullaby, or that
It was originally a song. It had a melody. This has been revised to be.
So you wrote
more
it
of a
initially
poem.
as a song.
Yeah, wrote it.
And did you
initially
write
as a
the
song.
music and the
Yes, I did.
the lyrics?
Yes, I
So
did.
the lyrics become
I did.
yeah,
yeah.
beautiful.
And Diane and I perform this sometimes with Diane reading it,
and you
and I accompany her on the harp.
nice, beautiful.
Yeah.
So many, where again with nature, I'm thinking Mary Oliver and the
Mhm.
beautiful way and sort of almost a catalog of nature, but then you bring in, nature red in tooth and claw,
Yeah.
that it's not all just beauty. There's going to be supper for that gray wolf.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, the gray wolf,
which is part of nature.
Yeah. A gray wolf has left our prairies, so that's part of the gray wolf's
Gotcha.
cry.
His cry. He's not
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Not there like it was.
I was thinking of the circle of life, but you're right.
It's all of that, and that's just it. It's all of that. We've kind of interfered a little bit with some of the circle of life as sort of part of the message, I guess. But anyway, I do want to mention real quick. I don't know how we are for time. Might I mention?
You know what? Yes, let's talk about. Let's talk. Yeah, I promised we're going to talk about Poetry on the Prairie, the Favorite Poem Project, and Poetry Palooza, the main event. But as you said, Poetry Palooza is the name of the umbrella for engaging the community in poetry.
Yes, it is. And so we do. There's Art on the Prairie in Perry, second weekend in November. The 8th and 9th, and we will be there as Poetry on the Prairie in the community room at the library. And we'll have, in fact, Diane and I are doing a workshop in the morning called Poets in the Wild. It's about kind of about eco poetry. Our state poet laureate, Vince Gutierrez, will be there with a poetry workshop at 1:00 in the afternoon. And then we have featured readings, and these are amazing poets. I can't even pronounce all of the names, but some of you might be familiar with Pastor Stringer from Plymouth Church. He'll be there. Clue, who keeps winning our slam finals, he will be there. Susanna DeBaca, who has a Substack column where she comments on the news of the day and other things via some amazing poetry. Vince will be reading. And then I'm going to mispronounce the name probably, Danielle Mimsy. But I believe he is our youth poet laureate in Iowa. And then a great poet, Amber Cannon, and Janet Carl. Those are going to be reading. And then I actually do play with David Williamson, who's from from Boone, Iowa now, a poet, sculptor, singer, songwriter, guitarist, very Renaissance man, to say the least. And we have a little group called Pullin' Strings. And I like to say we have 52 of them between us. And
how many strings do you have on the harp?
I have 46.
You have 46, and he has.
There are harps with more.
And he has a 6-string guitar.
6-string guitar.
Wonderful.
And we'll be hosting an open mic and performing at 3:30 to 4:30 on Saturday. And then
that's
on
Saturday, November 8th.
Yes.
In Perry.
In Perry,
Iowa.
And then on Sunday, November 8th, the Lyrical Iowa. We're part of the Iowa Poetry Association.
Sunday, November 9th.
Sunday, November 9th. We're part of the Iowa Poetry Association. We're technically a committee of the Iowa Poetry Association, but we have our own things that we do. But they're amazing and supportive. And so there'll be readings from Lyrical Iowa, the poetry book that Iowa Poetry Association publishes, and then a spoken word workshop and open mic and poetry slam with Kelsey Bigelow, who leads that work for both the Iowa Poetry Association and then brings the slam to Poetry Palooza every year as well. She's an amazing young poet and was one of our emerging Iowa poets last year.
Wonderful. So that's coming up November 8th and 9th in Perry, Iowa. And
then February 14th, 2 to 4 in the afternoon. Not sure of the location yet, but Favorite Poem
so
Project.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah, it'll be on Valentine's Day. There'll probably be some, if not champagne, some sparkly something, and then probably non-alcoholic and chocolates. And we're not sure exactly the location yet. We're still pinpointing that, but we bring in a lot of community leaders to read their favorite poems. And these are going to be favorite love poems, but love will be very broadly described. We are anticipating lots of cats and dogs and who knows what else. And Dr. Deming read at that Favorite Poem Project and its inaugural event last year. I say inaugural event for Poetry Palooza, but it is a resurrection of an event that used to be part of the Des Moines National Poetry Festival. Yeah.
And let's open it up to questions, and then we're going to end the show. You get to read us out with the last poem,
Okay.
but we're going to do some questions. We've got about 8 minutes or so for questions. Angelina, you're up first.
Hi. I would love a copy of that first poem about the cats and stuff because it is relatable.
I will give you my copy. Yes.
Oh, I would love it.
Thank you for liking it. Everyone remember, someone here in the audience actually liked that first poem I read. Not just me.
I'm going to have to study that one a little bit more.
I mean, I found myself singing with the cats and thinking, you know what? They do eat better than us. Our money budget is on them more than anything, but I love it. I love it. Well, anyways, I grew up with a musical family. So I tried to learn the accordion. That didn't go well with the mariachi. My dad played and all that. So music was always, and then my brothers wrote songs and stuff. But I really resonated with the Dr. Seuss rhyming stuff. I grew up with all that. But then when I got into high school, I got into writing class and poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like really, and I'm an artist. I like to draw. So there's a visual of when you were describing and reading those poems, I could see in an artistry visual of it being painted, like someone reading a poem and you're painting kind of what you're describing in a way.
That's beautiful.
And that's awesome. That's great talent, and people can do that too. But I noticed that when it came to my poems or my writings about my cancer journey, I met with a music therapist, and she read it. She goes, "This is a beautiful poem. I hate to do this to you, but to put it into a lyrical form, there are some things that are going to change so that the chords and the notes would go." And I was like, okay. And she goes, "Are you open to that?" I go, let's just see how we do. Because it is. When you write a poem, it brings a lot heart. And she tried to keep that in there so that you got the essence. And then the music brings on that meaning
Mm-hmm.
too. So it's interesting when you meant that you wrote it lyrically, I mean, as a song, but you had to change it to a poem. So it kind of goes both ways. Have
It
you
does,
noticed
yeah.
that?
Yeah,
So
I
have you
had to do
come
some
across
tweaking.
people who are going through that and want to make some things into music? Do you find that they go back and forth on it, or?
You know, I'm the only person I know that's actually done that. But I know there's lots of people who do, and it does have to have a shift. I mean, there's no doubt about it. For one thing, it just gets too rhymey. A song rhymes. The poems, when they get too rhymey, that becomes almost a distraction these days. It depends on the format you're using, the form you're using. But the original line was, "Sleep, sweet prairie, may the tall grass fairy," something. Well, I can't remember now, but it rhymed. It rhymed too much. Sorry. It rhymed too much.
Yep.
So I had to tweak that.
Yeah, that was something she noticed too. There's some things that are rhyming a little bit too much that in lyrically it's try and change that. And I said, okay. And she found it had the same meaning. It's just had a different format to it. And I was like, wow, I'm learning something considering I came from a musical family. So
Yeah.
that was awesome.
Well, and I've noticed my grandson, who's just started at Hannawalt, they're teaching him all these nursery rhymes now, but songs, through song. He's learning a lot of rhymes and information through song. And I found that kind of an interesting, I had forgotten about that, how much we do that.
Jackie.
That was my question, is what type of poetry do you like to read to your grandchild? Because, you know, just how you were inspired early on by your mother and your family. What about your next generation?
That's a great question. I really am doing, though, kind of the Dr. Seuss thing, but not entirely. I have this children's digest of poems, and so have tried to introduce some of those, because those were, in fact, I believe The Duel was published in one of those. The Blind Man and the Elephant. I mean, there's just some great old poems that I've been trying, that have a point, that I've been trying to introduce him to. But he's just 5. So we're not going too far down that path just yet.
I love Shel Silverstein.
Yeah.
And like the light in the attic and the edge of the sidewalk, but they're accompanied by some beautiful or crazy little cartoonish things, but the words and the rhyming and the made up words and really just fun to read out loud.
Yeah, it's great fun.
George, you have a question from the audience?
Yeah, Rob is watching on Facebook tonight. He just wanted to remind everyone, also a member of the Urbandale City Council. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that
couldn't
must
get
be
your-
my husband, Rob. Okay. Thanks, Rob. Yes, I'm currently a member of the Urbandale City Council. Okay, good
And,
job.
and I had a quick question. Thinking of another art form, painting, artists, there's a dichotomy between literal traditional type painters and impressionistic painters, that type of thing. Does that dichotomy exist in poetry?
I think that's interesting. I think of poetry. I guess some people might think about it that way. I do know, for example, my mom gets really mad that poems don't rhyme anymore.
Yeah.
I do know that. She says it's not poetry. It's something, but it's not poetry. So I know there's some of that out there, but I would think, generally speaking, for the most part, I think there's a lot of acceptance and welcoming of all kinds of different poems, and everybody's got it's so subjective. Everybody's got their own piece or their own taste, and I think even in some of the more abstract things, one of the reasons I was willing to read that really abstract poem or very out there poem was because there's something that people grasp onto in almost every piece of poetry. You got the cats, I got and as tired as you are, you think you can. Everybody gets something. So I don't know that it's that split up. And there is ekphrastic poetry where you actually write poems based on the visual piece. I've written some of those.
What's the word you used?
Ekphrastic. I think I'm spelling it correctly when I say EKPHRASTIC, but I wouldn't guarantee it.
Okay.
But it means it's based on another art form. You're writing a poem based on another art form, typically a visual piece. And our very first Poetry Palooza, we worked to do that because we were at Mainframe Studios for that first Palooza. Yeah.
Well, you get to go out with the last word. So send us off with a poem of your choosing.
It's a little bit a prayer, and it's a little bit environmental. Okay,
good.
Teach me to bird. Teach me to bird. May the first chirps of spring push me from my nest of percale, leaping from my eye-popping binoculars, and launch me on mission biological. Teach me to bird. May my spark bird's second sighting elude me as I learn to track from song snatch to flinching limb, trace leaf rustles, and know a backlit species by name. Teach me to bird with a bird's eye view beyond backyard to globe, boundary free, to see the habitat of harriers, the waters of petrels, the flyway of the Arctic tern. Teach me to bird. May my mind's eye parse a wing into parts, feathers into features, landscape into landing zones for the ancient history of flight.
Beautiful. Is that one of yours?
Yes, that's one of mine.
Wow. That is beautiful.
Thank you.
My guest tonight has been Pat Boddy, writer, poet, former director of Polk County Conservation, former director of the Department of Natural Resources, and
interim director,
and Urbandale City Council.
Thank you, Rob.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. Thank you. No, thank you, Pat. This has been
you.
wonderful. And I hope if people want to refresh their memory about all of the events with Poetry Palooza, can they go online to see those events?
PoetryAMP.org, and that stands for amplifying poetry. That's our goal.
Gotcha.
PoetryAMP.org. And the Palooza itself will be April 16th to 18th this year. at Viking Theater, and also we'll be partnering with Des Moines Area Community College and the University of Northern Iowa
Oh,
on this
wonderful.
particular one.
Wonderful. If anyone watching this show knows someone that would like to watch it, or if you'd like to watch it again, it will be available on demand beginning tomorrow at the Above and Beyond Cancer YouTube channel and the Mercy Cancer Center website. So you can hear Pat reading her poetry for your pleasure over and over again. I might have to do it for that first one. I think I want to lift the first one. Thanks for joining us this evening. I hope you'll join us again next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Deming.
Thank you.